a lot of work getting into. It's a lot of work getting into a new school. We're learning a lot, learning a lot, learning a lot. Relationships are very important, people, when you're teaching high school, just so everyone knows.
Sure, sure. But you feeling like you're getting to know the kids a bit?
Yes, things are going well.
Oh, good, good. That's
Good.
great.
Cindy, tell us when you want to get started and we'll get started.
I think we are ready to get started whenever you are, and I'll let you take the lead.
All right, and you're going to talk about the diversity subcommittee?
Yep.
Got it.
Bullet
Okay.
point number 2.
Yep. All right. Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for coming to this increasingly as we get closer. By the way, trust me, July 4th, 2026 will come before we know it. So we've got to get cranking on this. I know there's a couple new folks here. So could I just ask everybody to just introduce yourself and where, just very briefly, where you work. Okay, Bilal, you're my host, my trusted subcommittee chair. What can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Bilal Siku. I'm an associate professor of political science at the University of Hartford, and working with Steve to pull all of this together as his co-chair. So why don't I kick it to Tony Roy?
Thank you so much, Tony Roy, President, Connecticut Council for the Social Studies. I'm also a classroom teacher at CREC's Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts. And I guess if we're kicking it off to people, I'm going to go to Rebecca next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Tabor. I'm the Director of Secondary Education Programs here at the Connecticut Democracy Center.
You got to kick it to somebody, Rebecca.
Sorry, I was trying so hard not to put in my normal plea of please would you judge at a History Day contest because it's that time of year.
Go ahead. This is your spot. Go ahead, Rebecca.
All right.
Go for it. Go for it.
I'll put it in the link so everyone can sign up and judge. And I'm going to send it to my friend Christine Jewell.
Hi.
By the way, you need how many more judges?
About 150.
Okay.
And
Wow.
college students can sign up. So give your students extra credit to do it.
Hi, everyone. I'm an independent consultant, educator, currently working with Ancient Burying Ground in Hartford and 1636 Partnership, which is part of Center Church in downtown Hartford. Oh, I have to kick it to somebody. Tracy Wilson. Mute, unmute.
Thanks, Christine. I am Tracy Wilson. We were today at Watkinson talking about people from the First Church, from Reverend Woodbridge and the people he enslaved. I'm a retired social studies teacher from West Hartford and West Hartford's town historian. I'm going to kick it to Matt Warschauer.
Hi, everybody. Matt Warschauer, professor of history, Central Connecticut State University, and I am vice president of Connecticut Council for Social Studies. So I work closely with Tony and with Steve. Oh, I'm sorry. Got to kick it. We're all failing at this rather badly. I'll send it over to my good friend Kathy Hermes.
Thank you. Kathy Hermes, publisher of Connecticut Explored, Professor Emerita of History at CCSU, working on my own 250th project, The Spirit of Revolution, the Connecticut Line Explored. Thank you. I'm going to kick it to Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Hakila Diaz, or JHD. I use they and she pronouns, and I'm the professional learning coordinator at CCSS. Wow, I was going to say CCSU. My goodness. Okay, getting new jobs now. All right, I'm going to give it to Sam.
Sam Tondro, Director of Curriculum and Instruction at the Mohegan Tribe. I'm happy to be here today. I will send it over. I assume it hasn't gone to Allison. I'll send it over to Allison.
Hey, thanks, Sam. And I apologize. I'm in the car. I just got out of a staff meeting. I'm Allison Norrie. I'm a high school history teacher at Fairfield Ward High School in Fairfield, and I am the current president of the Association of the Study of Connecticut History. And I will kick it to, who'd we miss? Oh, Josh, are you there?
I'm here. Wikisak, Nito Bawak, Nataswis Josh. Good day, all. My name is Joshua Carter. I've been blessed with the awesome responsibility of being the executive director of the Massachusetts Pequot Museum and Research Center. Certainly privileged and appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of this group today. And I apologize, I'm not sure what's wrong with my camera, but you all are in good shape because you don't have to look at my face. So, yeah.
Who's next?
Kick it to Megan.
Who do we have left? Is that everybody?
Megan, how about Megan?
Megan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Altamari, and I'm the CEO at the Boys and Girls Club of Milford, as well as the president of the Connecticut State Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs.
Liz.
Okay, how about Matt?
Hi, Matt Farley. I'm the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer for Campus Compact. So we're a national coalition of college universities committed to civic engagement work, but I'm here in Connecticut. And is it Owen Raju? Did I murder that completely? Sorry about that.
You notice for the record, I'm guessing he was going to be near the end because nobody wanted to try to pronounce that. So that's no.
That was good, Matt. If I was a professor, Matt, I'll give you an A+, for pronouncing that name very well.
I'll take
My name is Olan Raju. I go by Ola for short, the state coordinator for the Kid Governor program here at the Connecticut Democracy Center. And I see one of my person here, Rebecca Tabor, shout out to you, but also Professor Walshauer, shout out to you as well. I know there's few CCSU alums, CCSU professors here, so go Blue Devils. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey, I was a judge this year for 2 years in a row for the Kid Governor. Just to put, so I'm just saying.
Yes, sir. I see you too, sir. I see you. It's good to be here. Thank you.
I think we've got Ruth still.
Yep, here I am. I'm Ruth Torres. I'm a citizen of Schaghticoke Tribal Nation. Our reservations in the area of Kent, Connecticut. I am talking to you from Brown University, where I am the tribal community member in residence. I live in West Haven. I'm a board member of the Connecticut Humanities.
Got you. Thanks again for coming.
Did we get everybody for sure? Did we get everybody?
I think that's everybody.
Liz did not introduce herself.
Oh, well, who's that, Liz?
Liz Devine.
Liz, my deepest apologies. My deepest apologies.
She's on mute. You're on mute.
Retired, Liz Devine, retired teacher, West Hartford, worked with Tracy in Hidden History.
Thanks an awful lot. First, we're going to sort of reverse the order of events today. The first thing we'd like and like you to hear about is, as you know, there's a 4-day conference coming up that I don't know if we could say America 250 is sponsoring, but at least we could say is strongly supporting. And Tony and Matt, if you could tell us about the first 2 days.
I'll let Matt take the lead on that. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Tony. So we have been working with Connecticut Humanities, America 250, a wide variety of other organizations to do this 4-day conference, working with the Association for the Study of Connecticut History, with Allison and her group. And the reason that we're focusing on this early, Steve started off our conversation today with saying that 2 years, this 250th is going to be here before we know it. And if we don't do something to get everybody not necessarily on the same page, but at least thinking about moving in the same direction, and we don't start developing some networks and some partnerships and people we can chat with and meet with and talk about things that we'd like to do, we're gonna be behind before we get to where we really need to go. And so that's the sort of the impetus of this. I've been sort of referring to it as a pre-conference in a lot of ways. So this is I'll be as tight as I can here. So this is 4 days. Because Tony and Steve and I work so closely, and JHD as well, with Connecticut Council for the Social Studies, and our mission is to promote social studies education, both for teachers, professional development, but also for students. We thought that's the place to begin. Let's invite 250 high school kids to CCSU for 2 days, and let's ask them about what freedom means, both historically and contemporarily. And Tony had the really great idea of contracting with a gentleman named Alex Taylor, who is just a great guy. He was the director of the Connecticut Youth Forum for 10 years, and he specializes in developing interaction and robust conversation among high school age students. And so we have him coming in, we're partnering with him, and we're really developing an incredibly interactive program where the kids are going to come in and explore this idea. On the first day, they're going to have 10 breakouts that we're able to put them into teams to create team building, and they're going to be exploring all kinds of subjects that revolve around the question of freedom in this historical and this contemporary context. And so this is about the Declaration of Independence era, but it's not tied to that. We want to think, I think, as the commission has, and I think as this subcommittee has, we want to think as broadly as we can about this subject and about the nature of democracy and government, and when does a people have the right to engage in social and or political protests. So those breakout sessions are going to be everything from questions of Black rights and Black freedom, to women and gender in American society, to indigenous peoples. And in fact, on this call, Sam Tondro is very graciously agreed to be our presenter for that day and for that session. And so we've got a lot. We're even doing one on January 6th, sedition or patriotism. So really looking at this in a lot of different ways. And we're really interested in hearing what the kids have to say. What is their concept of this subject? Because I had a great conversation over the holidays with a young woman who's a sophomore at Colgate University. And I was telling her about this. And she basically looked at me and goes, well, I don't feel like I have any connection to the Declaration of Independence. I don't really think it matters. Which to me, as an historian, obviously, was very, very shocking. And so I think there's a lot to explore and a lot to talk about. In addition to these breakout sessions and speakers and these conversations we're going to have, we are going to have a really, really robust exhibit hall in the main meeting area at CCSU, where we've invited lots and lots of different organizations to come and represent themselves and to represent, again, their idea of what they think freedom means. You got to hear Josh Carter's voice. Well, he and I had never worked together, and we ended up talking a little over a week ago and just had this fantastic conversation about what this could potentially mean for an exhibit from the Pequot Museum. And so they are going to be participating. We've got the Museum of Connecticut History. We've got Connecticut Museum of History and Culture. We've got just a lot of partner organizations. Kathy is going to come with Connecticut Explored. And so we want this to be intellectually and socially stimulating, but we also want it to be visually and content stimulating as well. So that's going to be super cool. So those are the first 2 days. The third day is Connecticut Humanities and the America 250 Commission. They have their own slate of speakers for that. And
could we turn that over to Cindy?
Sure.
Cindy, you're up.
I'm throwing the link in the chat. We don't have the speakers up there yet, but we will have Frank Mitchell moderating, as well as Andy Horowitz, our new state historian, Merle McGee from Everyday Democracy. And it'll be an array of sessions that are focused on the 4 themes that the commission has set forth for the 250th commemoration. And then really working with the media to get stories out about the 250th. And we should have the governor there in the morning to keynote the day, start us all off. But looking forward to seeing everybody there.
So Cindy, who's the audience for day 3? Who do you think the main attendees will be?
Yeah, we are really hoping that a variety of people join us that day. We're looking at museums and other practitioners, legislators, also thinking about folks who are on their town committees. Quite a few towns have a committee for the 250th at this point, so we're hoping to provide them with resources and connect them with one another. But really, we're open to having teachers join us whenever possible. I know it's hard, it is a Friday, but really, we're quite open about who can be there.
And then day 4, Allison, the president of ASH. Allison, do you want to lead us through that?
Yeah, sure. So we're still waiting on a few confirmations for that day, but essentially we've been working with CLHM now, but formerly CLHO, with Amherst there, to create, as well as Matt and his partner at the Avon Historical Society, Terry Wilson, to create a day that, one, sort of gives an overview of days 1, 2, and 3, but that also provides a scholarly lens, as well as a public history facing lens for smaller and medium-sized museums and local history organizations to be able to talk shop, plan for the forthcoming events that maybe they're doing or not doing for the 250, and then provide some scholarly talks and panels throughout the day. In addition to, for any museums that are interested in connecting to the public schools or any schools, to provide some sessions as well about how to connect the new K-12 state social studies standards to their work.
So who's the target audience for day 4, Allison?
Small, medium-sized museums and scholars predominantly.
Okay, and Cindy and Allison, how does one register for day 3 or 4 if they're interested?
So for day 4, there's an Eventbrite registration. There's you can go to the ASH website. Also, there's some cross promotion happening between, and thank you to Kathy, Connecticut Explored, some other, historical magazines and things of that nature. Thank you to Tony. CCSS is also promoting this pretty actively as well. And then, of course, CLHO, CLM is promoting it as well.
And for day 3, I threw the description in the chat, the website, which has a link to the registration page. And from there, we also link out to ASH's page with information.
Any questions on, and Matt, could you just remind us of the days of this?
This is Wednesday through Saturday, March 13, 14, 15, and 16. And just to, those are great descriptions. Thank you, Cindy and Allison. Just to let everybody know that the first 2 days, the Wednesday and Thursday, is really focused on the students. That's not necessarily an open day for anybody who wants to come. Of course, if it's members of this subcommittee, or we would love to host you that day if it's something you'd like to see. But I think it's going to be really interesting. But the Thursday and the Friday are going to be more sort of big picture open. So thank you.
Thank you. Just one other event to mention is that upcoming, Allison, I'm going to announce something about ASH, that ASH will be sponsoring from next fall all the way through July 4th, 2026, book talks on books related to the Revolution, to the Constitution, and how the Constitution is interpreted. We're going to be doing online book talks. We're going to do one a quarter, and we'll be getting information out about that. So that's another thing. And by the way, if anybody would be interested in being involved in that, just let us know. Cindy, reversing the agenda, could you kindly talk about the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Subcommittee and their work?
Of course. So at our commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access IDEA Subcommittee has asked all of the other subcommittees of the commission to really remember to include this work within the work that other subcommittees are doing. So I did include in the agenda for everybody to view some of the different metrics that they have recommended for specifically the education subcommittee. So they've asked us to examine the representation of diversity of historical perspectives in educational materials, programs, and exhibitions, measure the inclusivity of educational initiatives by ensuring they address a diversity of perspectives, identities, and experiences, measure inclusion and robust representation and perspective of historically marginalized and excluded communities and perspectives, and evaluate the accessibility of educational resources, such as providing materials in multiple formats and accommodating different learning needs. So I will also throw this in the chat. Oh, that's not copying very nicely into the chat, so never mind that. But it is in the agenda that I linked out to earlier today. So any feedback that anybody has on these metrics would be really helpful for Merle and John, who are the IDEA subcommittee chairs. They are really looking for how they can best support subcommittees in their work to make the commemoration of the 250th in Connecticut as inclusive as possible. And in addition to that, they are also asking for 1 to 2 representatives from the education subcommittee to serve on the IDEA subcommittee and really serve as a liaison between the two. So you do not have to volunteer right now, but if there are any volunteers, please feel free to reach out to me directly. And I'll leave it there for any questions.
Any questions?
Quick question. I wanted to ask, do you know what the time commitment will be for the volunteers?
My assumption would be probably an hour and a half, an hour to an hour and a half per month in a meeting with John and Merle and any other volunteers from other subcommittees. The only thing I would see in addition to that would be any support. I know they are working on developing a toolkit that can be shared with people who are hosting events or programs related to the 250th. So I'm sure they'll be asking for help in reviewing that as well.
Okay, thank you.
So again, we're looking for 2 volunteers, quote unquote, from our subcommittee. If you are interested, contact, as she said, just contact Cindy about it. All right. Nicole, you're here. Oh, she's walking. We'll give her a couple minutes here.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why my earphones aren't plugging in, but I am here.
Nicole, could you just introduce yourself very quickly?
Sure. My name is Nicole Jones. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. I currently work as the Humanities and Arts Project Manager at the State Department of Education in the Academic Office.
Thanks. What the major, if there's no questions or comments, what we'd like to do with the majority of our time today, or at least the majority of our time today, is we talked last time about a key thing that we thought this subcommittee should do is collect materials for schools and make available for schools, for universities, for the public, that our job is sort of to collect stuff. And what are we going to collect? and where are we going to get it? So Bilal, you're going to take this part of this conversation and take it away.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot, Steve. And so, part of the email everyone received, and also as a part of the agenda, was some other models from different states about what they are doing now with their America 250 websites and the way in which they are presenting information, for the public. What I really liked about this selection was that they're not all doing the same thing, which was really interesting to sort of look at. And it'll be interesting to see if they do a deeper dive the way we've sort of talked about in terms of the piece of the work that we're trying to do here. So did everyone get an opportunity at least to take a look at some of those websites, to sort of glance at them and to go through? And so part of what Steve and I have had, multiple conversations about, and as he sort of teed it up, was, what are we as the, sort of educational subcommittee, and our part of what this sort of public face of America 250, what it should look like. I know for me, a couple of things that really stood out, I thought, on the sites were information like on partner organizations. I love that there was a fundraising button on all, most of these sites, which I think we should, definitely do. I was intrigued by short videos being used, social media, asking volunteers to sign up, upcoming events, newsletter, integrating, and how to, and so there was a lot of stuff. And I know we've talked a lot about what is the information we actually want to present. And I guess what we were trying to do now was to generate some ideas. And I'm trying to think what's the best way that this can be recorded. I guess this is being recorded, and I know notes will be sort of drawn up with ideas that people come up with. But just in terms of looking at those sites, what are some of the things that jumped out at you about what others are doing and what we should be doing in terms of what we're sort of putting out there as the sort of public face of the America 250 for Connecticut, I guess, just as a broad, wide open question.
I personally liked the Rhode Island site, which featured contemporary people, right on their banner. So focusing on the 250th as something that's being experienced now, which is not to say that the history should be ignored, but I think sometimes when you start with a historical picture, it's not as inviting to the public. But I also, at the same time, was not crazy about the Virginia banner, which had just like fireworks, So I think reaching some kind of happy medium that shows Connecticut as a place that is engaging with the 250th, engaging its population with the 250th, is an important message to send forward.
So what a part of that, are you talking about just having people give reflections about what 250 means? Is that what you were drawn to? What specifically about what they were doing?
Well, I think, I think reflections, I don't think we need to copy any particular website. It's just, I like the, if you will, the kind of overview of the feeling that I got from the Rhode Island one, which seemed to be engaging its modern public, and the Pennsylvania one and the Massachusetts one kind of, they took the, it started here kind of message, right? But I think that in Connecticut, we don't have that reputation. We're still, people forget about us. So I think that we need to have a message that resonates with our public that nevertheless is still very historical. because Connecticut did do a lot in the American Revolution, and it certainly did a lot for independence. We have claims nobody else can make that need to be front and center. But I think we need to have current people reflecting on even things like, the fact that there were so many signers of the Declaration of Independence from Connecticut, that there was so much participation in the Continental Congress. If we want to emphasize democracy, participation in Congress is an important thing to bring up.
Mm-hmm. What about others?
I would just like to quickly echo the points made in the way of the opportunity to engage folks and how the sites that are currently in place now generally are going to turn off, in my opinion, a large portion of our population here in Connecticut. And I think the national site kind of has a nice mix as well. They seem to have struck kind of this happy medium where they're obviously emphasizing the fact that, there's a lot of history that needs to be brought to the forefront. There's an opportunity to discuss those topics, but, how is that relevant to who we are today as citizens of America? And I'm just kind of jumping on board with the previous comments that we need to take into consideration the customer here, right? The folks that we're looking to reach. And in order to do that, we need to appeal to them in a way that kind of keeps them engaged. We want them to participate. We want them to be part of what we're doing. We want them to be on these websites and taking in the information. And in order to do that, they need to be able to see themselves. I don't think they want to see guys with Revolutionary War hats and, muskets and whatnot. I think those type of things tend to turn off a large portion of our population. So trying to find a mix between the celebration of who we are today and the opportunity for us to learn about the history of how we got to where we are today.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I like both of those ideas. And it struck me when I was looking at the Pennsylvania video that the entire first part of the video was all, older white men who were speaking from a very legislative perspective. And it was only later that they got into, other people commenting. And I thought that said something from perspective as well. I really like Kathy's idea of trying to connect with the people in our communities, and what could we as an education subcommittee do to develop some kind of recording project where just people in different communities are out there giving comments about what do they think the Declaration means, what do they think about the 250th, and we have this wide variety of short comments that people are making. That might be really, really interesting. And then the last thing is, I would really like to see a website that that is polished, right? Our current website, America 250 Connecticut website, compared to like Massachusetts, for example. Massachusetts site is really nice looking. So those would be my thoughts.
Just a note that that some of the sites are paid, the construction are paid for by people. We're still raising money here. Cindy, would it be safe to say a little perhaps behind in fundraising in some of these other states? Would that be a fair statement or no?
I think the states that have the most polished websites have had the biggest investment in state dollars. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. I will say CT Visit is going to be overhauling our website, and we're looking hopefully at a launch date of July 4th of this year. So that is in the works.
And Cindy, for folks that don't know, not to beat the drum of negativity, how many state dollars have been allocated to America 250?
100,000 total, and we have 100,000 in private dollars, which we technically still don't have, but we received a pledge about a month ago. So we are on our way, but very slowly.
Right. What about others, just in terms of an initial reaction to what they saw and what it made them think about in terms of what we're doing or should be trying to do here?
I would like to talk a little bit about, I think it's the Pennsylvania website. I appreciated how they have a podcast, so we can listen to their latest podcasts. Obviously, all the other sites have a countdown. They have a video launch, and they have a acronym. It says, "We are striving to make 2026 epic," and each letter of the word epic represents something that's kind of related to their mission and purpose. So educate, preserve, innovate, and celebrate. So just the usability of the website, and also the visuality of it, like the colors are really nice and bright, and it's just, to me, it's accessible. So that might be something we want to consider in terms of thinking about like hashtags, thinking about how we want to create multiple methods to get folks in tune and or involved, like a podcast of some sort, and also just incorporating some visuals that are a little bit more appeasing to the eye.
Okay. Others, just in terms of an initial reaction.
I also like too how Pennsylvania had a nomination section. So they have a nominated service member. So they're shouting out to positive people in their community. And I think there are so many people in our Connecticut community that we could spotlight and give attention to, tell their story. It's also a way to share history.
Great. Other initial reactions? Just.
Yeah, if I can hop in real quick, it's Allison. In looking through the state websites, there's such a variety of different kinds of messaging, whether it's the photographs, whether it's the actual polish of the website, whether it's the mission step, whatever it is. There's a very, very large spectrum. And I think, and to harken back to Kathy's point earlier, in Connecticut, we're at a huge advantage that we have a story that's very unique and not so much a part of the narrative that's been told about the Declaration about democracy, and that we should play to that angle, right? I don't think it's a coincidence that so many people from Connecticut signed the Declaration of Independence. So there's a lot to work with in terms of us being sort of a conduit and also a middle ground for that spectrum, that sliding scale that seems to exist amongst the messaging that I've seen in those websites.
Right. Anyone else? So, obviously, a lot of the discussions that Steve and I had and others that we've had there, and obviously as an education committee, and I think Steve, teed this up pretty well when we talked about how we want to be a resource for K through 12, higher ed, and also the general public, right? That this is a site that when people go to it. And so, for me personally, I think a piece of what we have talked about doing, and I think we should really try to figure out how to do, is what I really liked about the Massachusetts site, where they have the resources, where they've got manuscript records, digitized public collections, newspaper collection, websites, podcasts, digital exhibition, material culture, image and maps, and just a ton of stuff. We've got museums. We've got a lot of those kinds of, resources in the state. I mean, are those the kind of things we want to put in front of people so that if K through 12 teachers want to do a day at a museum somewhere. Just, where do they go to find out what, is it the Pequot Museum? Is it, what are they sort of accessing? Is that the kind of information we also want to have as a part of this site where people can turn to those things to really look at original documents to see, about who are these folks who were signers of the Declaration, for example, that people would be able to actually identify them and could research them and look at them and explore these topics. And what would that look like? That's sort of a question that I had, and is that something we would like to try to do? As I like to say to my students, not all at the same time, one at a time. Go ahead,
I'm
Kat.
never shy about jumping in. I like the idea of a resource bank, and I know Connecticut Humanities has been trying to build one, and we're trying to, Connecticut Explored has been trying to pull that together. But I think, I don't know how much like the public is really going to go to archives and things like that. And so I think, and I think that teachers, if they're going to use things, raw archival material doesn't help. I think one of the things that needs to be done is sort of curated resources. And that means, volunteers to help do that kind of thing. I hope that the Spirit of Revolution that I mentioned earlier by Connecticut Explored, which will be a simulation that uses objects and archival materials from local historical societies and museums, will be one of those resources. But I also hope that we could have some curation of things like magazine articles, teach it plans that have been produced, and things like that. So it's not overwhelming for the general public when they want to look for resources. But I don't want to be the last word on that.
I've been thinking a lot about monuments and markers, and thinking about some real simple things that people can do in their own community. Connecticut is unique because we have our 169 towns, as you know, and I've been thinking about just having, this is accessible to the public too, to have scavenger hunts, like just walk around your green or go to the library. Like, anytime I go to a library anywhere in Connecticut, there's always markers everywhere. So I think it would be really fun to have a scavenger hunt. You could make it inclusive by having people submit photographs like, oh, wow, how many people look at those historic markers? I remember somebody in the 250 commission mentioned, oh, we should have markers. Connecticut has so many markers already. I would not condone new markers. I would ask people, what are the markers in your town? What's important about your town? What do you do in your town? And I think that would be a really fun, inclusive game. It would be family friendly, accessible. It could be a student project where kids can try to find things in their own community. I can't believe, like, every time I go to a new community, I can't believe how many rocks there are with a plaque on it, So, and statues, what are those statues about? And also encouraging people to reinterpret statues, because that's something that we've dealt with a lot in Connecticut, especially, with the John Mason statue. What would you do now with that statue? How can we reinterpret that statue to make it more inclusive, or to really come to terms with some of the history that we have here that's really horrifying, like Pequot War and before 1776. But I would really encourage people to do their own scavenger hunt.
Go ahead, Matt.
Just a quick shout out to Connecticut Explored. Kathy and I, and Josh is working with us as well. We actually have this summer issue is going to be a special issue on monuments and memory. And we are confronting the John Mason statue in that issue, and we're exploring the concept of monuments and what they mean and how do we interpret them. And so I'm totally in the same wavelength as you, Christine, and we might incorporate into this the so many of our cemeteries in our towns have American Rev War soldiers that are there. And where I live in West Hartford, we've got a huge stone, and Tracy knows this history well. We've got a huge stone to French soldiers who were killed in the American Revolution. So that we've got so much that's literally right around us. It's a matter of encouraging people to explore it. And I think so often, especially when it comes to monuments, people don't think about it. They don't recognize it. And when it's pointed out, they go, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was here. So.
Right. So I guess part of the question I'm asking also, though, is that these are, I think, great ideas, but do we want to have a sort of a hub, a place they can go that would say, here are where the cemeteries are at with the revolution, do we have those things in place? If there's a scavenger, and people want, I don't know if we want to create the stuff, but if there's something out there already, do we, can we put that up on this website so that people can do that if they want to explore graveyards to see revolutionary figures' names, for example? Where would they go to find out that even exists? And could 250 be the place where they'd find some information about that? That's what I'm sort of getting at about what we populate there. So I think these are great ideas, but if someone wanted to go to a museum in the state of Connecticut that was connected, is there a place where we could say, here are museums in the state, particularly places where we may not even know? We've got, Civil War museums, Revolutionary War museums. We got all kinds of stuff around the state. How do we direct people to go to those kind of things who might want to explore that, not from an academic standpoint, but just take a day out with the family and go look at this stuff? I don't know, Steve, weigh in if you want to, Steve, about this. I don't know if I'm sort of framing it.
And I was also wondering, is there actual, and this I'd ask people in museum world this question, is there actual content that we could create that would help historical institutions, or are they so individualized that no central content would help them?
I have to say, I was thinking about that and what all these historical societies are doing. Like, could we provide some help for them in helping them to tell their revolutionary stories? Because there's a lot of colonial homes in a lot of different towns that are historical societies. But I just want to go back to what Christine was saying, which is, if we're just going to look at the markers that are there, they're not so inclusive. And so maybe one of the challenges is to get towns to figure out a marker they could put up that includes people whose voices haven't been heard. And along those lines, there is the Connecticut Freedom Trail, which seems like a good source of information. And I think that people in many towns don't even know they have sites in their town. So maybe we can be a conduit to get that information out as well. But I do think if we rely on the markers that are there and the names of buildings and the names of greens, and that it's not such an inclusive story, or we have to be really, there's got to be a lot of interpretation that goes with this as well.
Right, that's what I was saying before about reinterpretation. I was in a webinar once and somebody said really something very wonderful and said, what if we just put up a marker that said more about how people feel about this and what story is not being told and how is this? It takes a lot of critical thinking. That's the only thing that I'm not sure an everyday person or family would be able to do, to say what's missing here, but even just to categorize it And also what I was mentioning before, it's more like crowdsourcing too. You know, these towns, the commission could connect with these towns and have each town try to take the lead in that, or a school in the town or something, because I don't think this commission can really come up with a comprehensive list. You know you're gonna forget something or somebody. That's why I was thinking, put it out to the towns to do some of this work, or schools.
If I could supplement Christine's point, because I think it's a good one, right? Resources are certainly not ideal. And anytime that we're able to kind of divide and conquer it, I'm sure we'll be much more successful in that way. I'm just wondering, in the way of process, for us to be able to, one, utilize the resources that are out there in the way of other educational institutions, museum institutions, towns, municipalities. And the other aspect to this too is, if we understand that a lot of what we have in place needs to be reinterpreted, as it was said, maybe it's within the context, whether it is a scavenger hunt or whatever have you. It's the intent is really to create the conversation, or to start going down the path of the reinterpretation process. I think maybe that might be engaging for some folks. One, just educational, and two, how can they contribute to the process of reinterpreting or further interpreting some of what we currently have in place. In addition to any type of resource bank, again, just thinking about process and how we vet the information that we're going to put out there. I know Sam mentioned specifically the opportunity for folks to tell their story. That certainly could pertain to all of what is being discussed at this point. If there's some sort of portal in which folks are able to contribute stories in relation to, again, monuments, in relation to specific events in history, obviously the Revolutionary War itself. If there's an opportunity for folks to contribute information to that, and again, there's resources that can vet that information, and then in turn, we're able to make that public and just, kind of part of the overall information that we're sharing.
Right. I mean, I think ultimately, over time, as we sort of continue these conversations, there are things we're going to try to do and talk about doing. And I think, I guess, when I was thinking about this conversation and having it with Steve, is really to sort of say, what's a piece of this we can sort of think about like right now? And one piece of that is, if we were to be a resource bank, what would that resource bank look like? What would we actually resource with people with? And then I think there are other pieces of that conversation about reinterpretation and some other things that we need to develop over time. Because I just think that will require some deeper thinking and deeper reflection, about what that actually looks like. And so if we were just to, take a step back and say, okay, let's focus and let's just think about, if we were, just that piece of it around a resource bank, what would that resource bank look like, especially one that is inclusive? Because I think there are things that can make that an inclusive resource bank that are here in the state that more people should have access to and know about. And part of it is sort of collecting that. At least that was kind of the hope. And I don't know, Steve, I mean, you may have an interpretation of what we were trying to do with this conversation as well.
Yeah, I've got a question that is, and it's an unanswerable question, but what the hell, I'll ask it anyway. Do you find folks think, are the people all that are running these celebrations in all the towns, right? There's groups, historical societies. Do you think they will, to what extent will they see the need to give the story of the diverse groups and their contributions to this story? I mean, it's an unanswerable question, but that worries me. Is that an item of worry? will the local groups all see the need, not just to talk about the 3 people in their community that signed the Declaration of Independence, but to give the story of others that were in their community at the time that were engaged?
I think the resources is where we drive that project-based approach and how we drive the conversations. Whatever we can create as a subcommittee and provide to them will start their projects and conversations. I think that certain people will always have a spotlight in towns that continuously celebrate certain people. But if we try to motivate the narrative to including stories that are not, always accessible, we could help with that.
I also wonder if we might do something with schools and maybe museums that said, here are 5 things we think would be good to do in your school, and if you do these, you get this flag, or you become a blue ribbon school, or whatever it is, a revolutionary school, and so then you're incentivizing them to do some of these things. And then it would make us think, okay, well, what is it we want them to do? And encourage that. And I guess I kind of got that idea. I think Bilal said it at the beginning about one of the states was doing a lot with partners, but to make the schools feel like they were part of something bigger. I don't know. I know there is is it red, white, and blue schools?
Yes.
But maybe we could say, here are 5 things that we hope every school will do as a baseline. And, do you want to be part? I don't know. Is that something the State Department could be involved in, Steve, or no?
Sure. We could, and that could be the red, white, and blue theme for a year.
Right.
Yeah, also, I was thinking, sorry, one way around that might also be family history and trying to encourage, like going back to what Kathy was saying about contemporary voices, and to try to skirt around some of those communities that do have those 1 or 2 voices. To maybe you could tap into the schools to diversify as well,
Matt, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of things. One, I think we have some natural built-ins here, right? So we've got red, white, and blue schools. We've got Connecticut Council for the Social Studies. We've got Connecticut History Day. All of these combined can be big drivers. We all know it's tough to break into schools because our teachers are so busy. But since we've already got these natural conduits, I think all of these varying ideas can be developed. In terms of how to connect with various organizations and towns, this is one of the major focuses that Allison is working on with Ash for the 4th day of this conference, right? Is to figure out what their ideas are. Second, from just a really, really specific logistical point of view, when we were the Civil War Commemoration Commission was working on the 150th, we ran the main website out of CCSU here. So, where we run the website from is, we're going to have the America 250 website. That's great. But how do we populate it is one of the big, really specific questions right now. We were super fortunate that there was already a book that was done on all of the Connecticut towns that were around during the Civil War. And we were able to get permission to put a lot of that stuff on our website. So every single town was listed. That was great. I don't know. Is there a list that provides this kind of information someplace? Would Connecticut Museum of History and Culture have that? Do we have a list of Revolutionary War monuments that are around, even though with Tracy's comment that a lot of these don't speak to larger groups? But we could certainly, and then I'll close it out, we could certainly, through ASH and Connecticut League of History Organizations and Connecticut Humanities, send out some sort of questionnaire to every single town, the historical sites, the museums, and basically a form. It's not even a questionnaire. It's a form that they can fill out that would automatically populate to a central resource that provides information about their Revolutionary War and Declaration history, and allows them to put links and any information they want, so that we can at least start to create some kind of database that when people go to it, they do have resources.
Rebecca, this may be a you question, but for next year or the year after,
I think that's Allison.
I think Allison's breaking up a little bit.
The remix.
That's kind of
Allison,
cool.
are you
That is
trying to?
kinda cool.
Yeah, I don't know, Allison, if you're trying to say something, you're breaking up a lot, or maybe to go on mute if you're not trying to talk to us.
Sam, I think you were saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rebecca, for next year or the year after for Connecticut History Day, this year's Turning Points in History, can we make a topic specifically for the 250th that pushes
Yeah.
students into researching?
I think if I remember correctly, this is not public yet, but I believe next year's theme, because National History Day is, of course, gearing up for the 250th on their level, but I think next year's theme is something like rights and responsibilities. So it's lining up, and I don't know the year beyond that. I just live in the moment. But they're definitely gearing up for the 250th as well. So I'm sure it'll be something completely compatible. But, one thing I'm kind of thinking, Sam, as you were talking, is that maybe part of what we can do is, as a group, come up with some good ideas for students. We always do our list of suggested Connecticut topics, but maybe have some that the group generates that really speak to some of the themes of the 250th. And, perhaps we could do some kind of, educational opportunity or for students or teachers or whomever, and do it virtually, because that, next fall, to really kind of generate some student excitement about exploring some of those topics.
I'll repeat, for the next 2 years, we could make red, white, and blue a 250 theme of various types. And that would, I think, be a good thing. Cindy, there's no plan, am I correct, that individual towns would have to submit their plan? There's no thought by the commission to do that, am I correct?
I'm trying to make sure I'm getting your question right. So
in other words, does every town, whatever their commemoration is, they don't have to submit that for approval or anything like that, or do they?
Not for approval. There will be the ability to submit their information for the commission and the state of Connecticut to share it externally. So there will be like an events approval process to get it posted on the website and things like that, but not necessarily, they can move forward whether we post it or not. It's up to them what they want to do.
And any other, go ahead, Cindy, look like you were going on.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say that the other part of that is that any funding will be tied to applying for funding through Connecticut Humanities. So there will be a certain level of, I don't want to say oversight, but guardrails in terms of what the funding is going towards. But that it's not, the point is not to be exclusionary.
Gotcha. And about the resource portal that Bilal was talking about, for those of you that are teachers or ex-teachers or whatever, what would teachers want? Would they want lesson plans, resources? What would teachers want to do? What would they want to see in the portal? What would a teacher want, do you think, that would be the most helpful to them?
I think that as a classroom teacher, I could probably speak to this a little bit, but I think teachers would probably want to have resources that students can access. And what I mean by access is actually be able to read. So like maybe a secondary source that is at the reading level of a variety of students. Also, access to primary sources would be helpful. And even though teachers don't typically use lesson plans in their full written capacity, but maybe an idea for a lesson or maybe an inquiry question or something would be helpful to kind of help teachers kind of start down the path. I think it's also important to remember that most teachers only teach Declaration of Independence if it's like civics, which is in high school for a very short amount of time. 8th grade, which is when we're doing U.S. history the second time, and then also in 5th grade. So just think about what are the grade levels that students are actually interacting with the content. Not to say that teachers won't make space for it, but I just think it's important that we realize that, you know, we can't just give a bunch of college level resources and say, have at it AP 12th grade government, because that's only a very small section of the student population. Thanks.
I wonder if Teach It might have a whole section that, you know, is under the topic of freedom, because I think Tony is right. You know, I mean, we want to take this idea of freedom and show it throughout the chronology. So I wonder if somehow that could be a search word on Teach It, and maybe this stuff could be funneled through there rather than setting up a whole other portal. I'm not sure what others think about that.
Isn't Teach It, I thought, already has that topic. It has like keywords. So I think it is
okay. So it's
a keyword already. Yeah, but
okay.
that could, yeah, it could be anything. But it would be nice if some of those existing resources had a special section where they could just congregate all that information into one place.
I mean, that's a part of the way in which I was hoping the conversation would go. What would be those resources, and, you know, that we would place that when someone gets there, they would be able to then follow to that. And I think that's what we're really trying to get at. But I also think, you know, certainly we talked about K through 12, but we also want to direct some of this towards higher ed as well, which is another part of what we should be thinking about as well. With Sam, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and outside of the grade levels that Tony talked about, lower or higher or outside of K to 12, we also want to teach building a community, right? Because all of this is celebrating our communities, so that can fit anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So how to focus on that.
Matt, if you're with us, what materials would be helpful, do you think, to university folks?
I am here. Sorry, I've been distracted. I'm listening, but distracted by a situation I'm dealing with. And trying to keep track of the conversation. I mean, obviously there's a number of professors on the call, so I'll defer to them. But generally, I think probably similar to the kind of K-12 conversation, that there's a lesson plan inspiration document. You know, I think so if it's curricular, I think there's kind of a, you know, what's a lesson plan, knowing that it's going to be modified probably dramatically depending on who uses it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think on the co-curricular side, I think it's the same concept, right? Like what would be a programmatic, you know, whether it's on the residence hall or through a student activities setting, through an office of civic engagement. I think there's a lot of different things here. It depends on the angle that we want to go with, but I think having some of the basics, having some referrals to other resources, like we don't have to create everything. There's going to be a ton of stuff that's already out there, that's probably out there now, that could be repurposed for this. And I think there's also going to be a lot of things created through the, you know, national efforts around this. So I think there's pieces there. I do think some of that, like whether it was CCSU, I think if I was tracking in the comments around the app for some of these like local place-based scavenger hunt type things, would be really interesting. I don't see them getting fired up about this, but, you know, as part of like an orientation process for students, like, or first year programs, like if there was a getting to know your community concept and there was a chance to kind of integrate that, do I think all instructors will jump on it? No, but I do think it could be a nice kind of option for folks, and especially to have a couple of experiment. And a lot of those things can actually live on beyond, just this celebration when you have some good experiences there. So, and I'll think more about kind of some of the, again, I think there's a lot of dialogue opportunities, discussion guides, things like that could be done both in curricular and co-curricular settings. So I think it's more pointing people. I don't think it has to be a creation agenda per se.
The resources are not there to be a creation agenda, so definitely pointing people in the direction, I think is, what it is. And the question is, what do we point them in the direction to, I think is what we need to.
Yeah. So I think like an example of this, I know somebody had mentioned the monuments thing, right? So like there are also national issue guides out there about monuments that could be a thing to work off of, and then to have a local one, right? A local twist on that. So that could be a nice complement of, what are some existing from various organizations, that we can bring to the table for things like that.
Absolutely. Are there other sort of comments or thoughts that people have?
On a theoretical portal or whatever below, I'm wondering, is it a waste of effort, or would there be some place where a Connecticut citizen who had interest in 250, there might be some articles just for them to read as well? I wonder if that just for the quote unquote, poor choice of word, but average Connecticut resident who might have interest and might come to the website, should we have something for them as well?
You could have a blog feature that features very short, 600 word, 800 word articles that are illustrated about various topics, like looking at, the veterans experience, or looking at the experience of, women in the American Revolution, women of color in the American Revolution, just short blog topics that you have that, incorporates local research. And you might even get students to work on some of those topics. But by having short little illustrated blog posts, you can send people to information through linking. So I don't know if that's something that the site can undertake.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to crowdsourcing. So it's difficult to be inclusive in that way, but I think it's a good start to just crowdsource and to like have the Connecticut League of Museums, for example, have a form if people want to submit something. I know Kathy's getting information from some historical societies about resources and primary sources. And so I would encourage some kind of a survey. Google Forms and Google surveys are fantastic. I love those because they populate that Excel spreadsheet, but leave it up to people to give that information in some way and see what comes out of that first.
So is that with the idea that they would be the ones who really are in charge of that, but it would find its way back to the website, possibly what people are generating? Because I'm just, wondering about, do we have the resources to like do the video stuff and
yeah.
I mean, that's just not, and Cindy, maybe there's a pot of gold somewhere you haven't told us about, but it sounds to me like that's an undertaking that someone else is doing and it finds its way. So, if you're going to generate the short videos, which I really love as an idea, but the question is, how do they get created? Who's in charge of that? Right? And I don't think this committee is in charge of that. It has to be some institution that we've partnered with who might do that. A CCSU class could, maybe as a project could do something or UHART class could do that. But I mean, that has to be sort of done that way. I don't think we do it, but it's really who we partner with that does that.
Yeah, they have the marketing campaign, for example, the state commission. Are they going to have a TikTok page? You know, think about all of the crowdsourcing that's done today. Everybody's doing TikToks and videos. So is there a way to have people going back to what Kathy said about collecting contemporary voices about what does America mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? I think that's a great way to do it. Obviously, there would be safeguards and things like that, but it's kind of an interesting idea. Maybe the communications or marketing team could be punted that idea.
Well, I wonder too if you know, like I'm actually not sure what the role of this committee is per se. Like, you know, do we have assignments as members of the committee? And, you know, maybe we want to do that to actually get things done. So to put somebody in charge of finding the undergraduate class that would create the videos or write the blog posts or whatever feature, you know, or find the teach it lessons that are out there. You know, I mean, could we divide up tasks that are doable, that don't burden any particular member of the committee too much, but that result in something? I don't know. I mean, I'm asking this as somebody who doesn't know exactly what form we're supposed to take here, you know, or what duties we're supposed to fulfill.
I don't have the answer to that question, so I don't know. Steve, do you have some thoughts? Or Cindy as well?
Cindy, you got anything on this?
I think maybe at this point, Steve, you, me, and Bilal can meet and kind of talk through. I'm wondering if we don't talk through some of these ideas, see what makes sense, what we want to tackle, and then come back in a month for our next meeting with a list of what we want to accomplish and then get some volunteers.
Yeah. I think that's a good approach. I mean, this is sort of generated, you know, far beyond my expectation in terms of the range. It's a wide range of ideas that have been thrown out today. And I think, you know, as we think about how we set up future meetings, I think we need to think about how we may tackle pieces of this. Well, this was a very broad conversation, but I think if we're going to be constructive, then we need to sort of figure out what are the specific, you know, to break this down into specific kinds of focused conversations that we can go deeply in. But again, we've got to process all of what we've heard today to try to figure out what those pieces are.
Cindy, will there be, I know each community is going to have their commemoration. But is the plan that there will be large statewide commemorations as well, or is that not, we haven't gotten that far yet?
We've had a couple of conversations about what a statewide event will look like, but we haven't really thought about commemoration or like if there are any initiatives, I'll say, that are going to be statewide initiatives. So I think maybe that's a topic for future conversation. Is there one initiative that the education subcommittee would like to see in schools?
Well, that's what I was
perhaps
actually, that's exactly why I was asking the question.
there's no plan, but that doesn't mean there can't be a plan. It's just we would probably need to figure that out fairly soon so that we can be ready to launch it in the next school year, most likely.
Anything else? Any other sort of thoughts or comments? Wouldn't be the end of the world if we ended 8 minutes early.
I have a random one, but not for discussion, but somewhere along the line, the conversation made me think about this initiative. I'm going to throw it in chat. So this is out of MIT, and they called Local Voices Network. I I don't know the status of it. It got kind of bounced around a little bit. There were some changes up there, and so I haven't interacted with them in a couple of years. But they use kind of like digital hubs using AI to help connect conversations that happen separately, and kind of allow users and organizers to kind of look at data and the conversation themes in interesting ways. So like you could have basically, in different geographies, the same dialogue facilitated by a human, just to clarify that, and then, but basically they kind of like weave together these conversations and be like, hey, what are those common themes that are happening? Or what did somebody across the state say related to this, this same topic? There's different ways to access it. This, I know by me throwing this out there, it opens up a whole other thing, which I don't want to do that because I know you had closure in the agenda and I too need to run, but it would be interesting to kind of figure out how do you thread different things that are happening, right? Different conversations that are happening to build towards something. Like, so if we're going to have thinking about common initiative stuff, it would be just neat to figure out maybe how to leverage things like this or maybe other related things that could, build towards something, I guess is the point. So I'm throwing this out there as a last grenade to your agenda and to closure, but I also, as a nerd, just think it's pretty cool and slash scary that the robots are going to kill us. But I do think in the short run, let's enjoy it and benefit from it. So that's my contribution for the day. You're welcome.
We got enjoy and be killed all in one sentence. I appreciate that.
Efficient.
Well, as I said, very, very rich conversation. Thanks so much
Appreciate
for
it.
everyone
And
who stayed on.
no, I think these conversations, I agree with you. We should have, but I think sometimes you got to have conversations like this to get to the specific tasks.
Mhm.
And I think we're getting there. So again, just to mirror Bilal, thanks to everybody. We'll be meeting and we'll get back to you with next steps. How about that? Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.